Yes.
We're all familiar with Siddhartha, Hermaness's book.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one part where Siddhartha realizes his consciousness as going from fish to frog, upwardness. That's kind of the crass way of describing it within your lecture. Is that the kind of idea you mean by this? He imagines himself as this continuum of consciousness, embodied in different forms. And has to be able to linearity, almost like evolution. But I don't think it has to be that way. But is that what you mean? I have trouble with that because whenever I ask to do this, they don't seem to really have it.
It's not like we're all sharing one consciousness. It's not that kind of panpsychism. Okay, it's not that sort of mystical oneness of being. It's not that. We all have our own sort of, what I would say, call a karmic line of force, which connects one life to the other. And there's just what the rebirth process is basically radical causal continuity from one life to the next.
Yeah, I'm not getting the difference between rebirth and reincarnation.
Well, rebirth, there is no substantial self which stays the same. Reincarnation, there is. The reincarnation is just the transmigration of the substantial eternal entity across many lives. Rebirth is the process of consciousness constantly becoming embodied in different lives, but the consciousness itself is changing. The reason we can understand lives, like my past lives or your past lives, is because there's causal continuity, but there's no substantial agent which stays the same throughout.
So you're saying it's like a huge ocean, and that gets embodied?
I'd say many different rivers. Okay. So the positive definition. So, a citation from one of the oldest texts. There is, monks, an unborn, an unbecome, an unmade, an unfabricated. If there were not that unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated, it would not be the case that emancipation from the born, the become, the made, the fabricated would be discerned. But precisely because there is this unborn, unbecome, unmade, and unfabricated, emancipation is possible and discerned. So, the Buddha also says that Nibbana is profound, hard to see and understand, and unattainable by mere reasoning. And the quintessent positive definition, which is actually just another negative definition in disguise, is imata, deathlessness. So the idea is that there is a state, it exists beyond the realm of samsara, it is the alleviation of all misery and death. It is the deathless. And if you want to be hardcore metaphysicians about it, you could start constructing theories about the nature of mind because of that. Well, if Nibbana can be experienced, then surely it is some kind of mind which exists beyond this world. But that is not what the Buddha wants us to do, because even by engaging on that level of speculation, you are misunderstanding the point of the teaching. Okay, we are so wrapped up in our own consciousness and the way that we are in our habitual cognitive economy, that to even engage in that kind of speculative reasoning is to walk in the complete opposite direction of the final goal. Okay, I'm going to try and make that clearer right now, like immediately. But because, as I know, myself included, the minute you say, Nibbana is the deathlessness, Nibbana is the liberation from that and it is deathless, you instantly start trying to create positive concepts and derive some sort of hierarchy that brings itself down into the world we live in now. And that kind of cognitive behavior is very dangerous. That leads to the sixth and seventh fetters. Attachments to the form or the formlessness. Then we start thinking, Nibbana is the formless realm beyond this one, which is the open mind. And it's just like, no, don't do that. That's not the way. Yes?
So we can distinguish here, though, between an analysis of Buddhism which is bad because it gets something wrong, it's incorrect, and an analysis of Buddhism which is bad because it holds the analyst back, right? And I think there's a distinction.
Profound point. It depends on where you're coming from.
Well, I guess
right? In some sense, yes, right? But the Buddha, as I already said at the beginning, all the theory is secondary to the practice. So if you think you've asserted some theoretical truth about Buddhism which impedes your practice, that's not good, right? That's not the way. Like, if you've asserted some propositional truth which follows about, say, the necessary mental nature of Nibbana.
So there's a kind of a benefit
kind of what?
A kind of benefit of the doubt in the sense that,
Yes.
in the sense of allowing that there was something of which this is kind of an impure expression inwards.
Absolutely. The favorite term is ehipassiko, come and see. So the idea is there's a certain amount of theory, a certain amount of language that we can use to describe what's going on, and then eventually you're either convinced or you're not, and you take the step. You start meditating. And if you don't want to take that step, that's fine. But the understanding comes from the experience, and that's it. Because it's not about trying to provide some overarching theory of why we're here. It's like, no, the overarching theory is, how do I get out of all this misery? And that's it. And anything that lies outside of that is irrelevant.
You said that there is no one self that is always evolving and changing. Would that be the same with the practice of Buddhist teachings? That you can't really say that there's one overarching theory because as the self is ever changing, not the teaching itself, but the practice of the teaching is changing as well. If not in literal form, then in the way we experience it.
The experiences that people have during meditation are radically unique based on the different constitution of the individual. But there are certain milestones that everyone has to pass, right? There are certain points along the way that everyone has to go past in order to get to there, right? And the content of the experience may radically differ based on the psychological constitution of the individual. But for instance, there comes a point at which the taste of Nibbana that the Buddha experiences is the same as the one that the Arhat experiences, right? It's the same. It's the same thing. It's just that the difference is the Buddha is someone who experienced it and figured it out for himself. The Arhat is someone who was given the teaching and followed instructions and got there because of the help he was given, right? Anyone who achieves sotapanna, the first level of insight, that's the same experience for everybody. Because those same three fetters are gone. Those same three fetters may manifest in different ways. Maybe you're really attached to, some sort of self-view that has to do with necessary unities of self behind the perception aggregate, and I'm more about the sankharas, right? It's still the same fetter. And all of those 15 identity views have to be completely abandoned, right? So is that, okay. So, the experiential realization of deathlessness, that's the goal. That's the positive goal. But in order to make this definition clear, without committing us to radical ontologies, which take us further away from the final goal at the experiential level, let's do a little bit more negative definitions. How do we do? We're a little bit behind, but I kind of want to press through if that's all right. Is everyone, you're still with me? Everyone's okay? All right, good. So what I want to do now is sort of trace out what I see as being the Buddha's, a very sketchy outline, but an outline nonetheless of what Buddhist metaphysics or cosmology is about, like world stuff and mind stuff, and show how Nibbana is neither. It's the middle point between the two, right? It's not some state of consciousness that you achieve, nor is it some world that you're trying to get to. It's not a heaven. Okay, it's something else. It's got that positive definition of deathlessness, right? So surely it's got some reality, but by explaining the yanas, which are meditative absorptions, which I'll explain in a minute, and this sort of like really robust, like extremely extended, to use your term, supernatural cosmology, and by understanding, and Nibbana is none of that. It's not that stuff. Then, at least at the Sutta Mayapanya level, hopefully we can move on and understand, like, okay, so there is a positive sense. It's a goal worth pursuing beyond merely a psychologism, right? But the role of theorizing about it is strictly bracketed, okay? All right. So I'm going to try and use the yanas and this robust cosmology as an epistemic and metaphysical correlates for what Nibbana is not in order to accomplish this. Now the yanas, very deep states of meditative concentration that allow the mind to achieve one-pointedness. These kinds of meditations precede the Buddha. He used them and explored them for many years before he realized the path to liberation. But certain of the yanas are very useful for developing a meditative base for insight. So this is the essence of the samadhi part of the path. This kind of concentration, this like really focused, hyper-aware, one-pointed concentration,